Before we start the meeting, I just need to formally ask for somebody to nominate a chair for the meeting in the absence of Councillor Denton.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Keeble.
Thank you, Councillor.
I'll happy to say.
Thank you very much.
Is that going to be formally done on video?
Yeah, it's all been done on video, so now you can start.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Councillor Stephen Keeble. I am chairing this meeting of the Building Control Joint Committee for North Devon and Mid Devon District Council. Do I need to read out the briefing note?
Please.
For chairs for the opening of the meetings taking place here at the Brinsley Environmental Centre. Welcome to councillors, officers and members of the public to the meeting of the Building Control Joint Committee. Reminder, please switch off your mobiles to silent. There are members of the press together with officers from Mid Devon District Council attending this meeting virtually. Can I please ask those attending virtually to switch off your microphones to avoid any disruption during the meeting. The meeting is being recorded and will be available in due course on the council's YouTube channel. And a reminder for councillors, firstly, to ensure that those attending virtually can hear the proceedings, and for the recording to capture the entire meeting, please ensure that you project your voice and speak clearly. And secondly, please remember it's a formal meeting and therefore do not refer to each other by first names. Thank you. Do we have apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. I have apologies from Councillor Denton.
Councillor Denton's apologies noted. To approve the correct record, the minutes of the meeting held on the 25th of July 2024. These are attached.
I'll move to approve those.
Councillor Lever moves approval. Councillor Chris.
I have to abstain. I wasn't.
I second them.
For clarity, could you minute that I abstained because I didn't attend?
No problem.
Thank you.
Just need to vote, Chair.
But voting on those, that's carried. Items brought forward, which in the opinion of the chair should be considered as a matter of urgency. I have none. Declarations of interest.
I've received none, Chair.
Thank you. No further interests. Item 5, to agree the agenda between Part A and Part B confidential. Those in favour? Moving to Part A. There is no items under Part B. Just before we do go into that, but we have an incredible amount of information which appears to me to be commercially sensitive information, which is going into the public domain. I think we just need to be aware of that. Certainly the minutes are very, very comprehensive, and this maybe requires a consideration outside of the meeting.
In terms of the content on what's on the agenda today?
No, it really is in the content of past meetings.
Right.
And what's looking at the because we're in an intensely competitive environment, and I'm just expressing caution about the volume of information that we may be putting into the public domain, and whether that is appropriate.
Chair, if I can, obviously the trading accounts and financial information is something we have to legally publish, so that has to be published on our website and both councils' websites in terms of how the building control partnership are trading. Similarly, our fees and charges, we do have to be open and transparent with those as well in terms of that's available on our website. So I suppose the discussions we have within the committee and what gets minuted is only in relation to that financial data that the finance manager will reduce and talk about. And similarly, when the building control manager is talking about fees and charges levels, again, that's information that's already out there in the public domain. So as long as we're not deviating from what's already out there, then that commercial sensitivity is fine within Part A. If there's anything of a sensitive nature, we would obviously move into Part B and consider it under there.
Thank you. Thank you. So it's back to you. Item 6, the trading account for quarter 1.
Okay, I'll pass over to Mr. Rumble, who's the finance manager. He's going to present both those items for you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. John. I'm here to present the quarter 1 and quarter 2 forecast outturn position for the joint trading account. These can be found in your packs on pages 17 and 19. I would like to briefly talk members through the figures, but I'll mainly concentrate on the detail of the quarter 2 table, as this is the most up-to-date position. First set of columns labelled 1 shows the annual budget for each authority. The second set of columns shows the forecast for the year based on the quarter 2 information. Overall, this is showing £130,000 adverse variance compared to the budget. The variance is predominantly to do with the reduction in income across both authorities of £100,000 and expenditure being up by £30,000, which is predominantly relating to the employees. In section 3, we then allocate the forecast costs based on the split projected income across the 2 authorities. The current split is 63.24% North Devon and 36.76% Mid Devon District Council. The net effect of this compared to each authority's budget is shown in the table on the bottom left of the pack on page 19. Projected North Devon to be 79,000 down and Mid Devon to be 51,000 down. This is a slightly worsening position from the quarter 1 figures, where we're only reporting an 80k deficit across both authorities. Section 4 on the table deals with the 75% chargeable and 25% non-chargeable elements, where you can see both authorities are now making a slight loss on their chargeable elements. Thank you, members. That was my brief presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Gentlemen? No?
Looking at the North Devon figures for employees against budget, is that because of agency staff, or is that just having to pay people more?
I believe that we are paying the agency staff from the North Devon District Council's budgets. So even though it appears like they're showing in there, when we then split it across the trading account, that's how we split on the end position for the authorities. It doesn't really matter which one they come from, because we split it on the basis of the income split.
Okay. And I guess that explains the reduction in employees' costs on the Mid Devon one.
Yes. Yeah.
Are we okay to note the report?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I think Mr. Deal had his hand up, the officer from Mid Devon. I didn't know if Paul wanted to come in.
Paul Deal?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, sorry, it was more a query about the income. As a layperson, can you just it perhaps is going to come in the next item. About the trading. How is the trend for income? Is the market picking up again now?
Yes, Andrew Howard. I think the market is still very unsettled. I think given this position in the economy, we can't really expect that to show any significant signs of recovery in the short term. So I think that position is going to remain pretty much as it is for the foreseeable future until we see some significant changes in the economy in general.
Thank you.
If I can just add to what Andy said. So in terms of just adding to that, Paul, so last year's financial outturn saw Mid Devon's income at 180,000. And as you can see from the forecasts this year, that's increasing to 220. So even though there was a price rise built into 24-25, that's still increased volume from where Mid Devon's income was last financial year. And similarly with North Devon, our income last year was 338. We're forecasting 400. So again, even with a price increase, there is additional volume showing there. So there's been some growth in volume. Obviously, we'd like to see it grow further, but obviously we are where the market is at the moment. But at least that trend is increasing even with the price increase.
Yeah, I mean, I think sorry, it's Andy Howard again. Application numbers are quite a crude way of judging volume, because obviously what an application can cover a window installation, or it can cover a whole housing development, and obviously the charges to those two types of schemes are very significantly different. But we're around 200 applications to 300 applications down on where we were pre-COVID trading. So with the volume, while it's going in the right direction, I don't see there going to be any significant increases unless something significant happens across the economy as a whole.
I think we're going to pick this up again when we come to your report as the last item today. Any more questions, Paul?
No, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Let's move on to item 7, which is the Q2 report.
I think we'll probably cover both of them. Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Right. Are you then, Andy, with your report?
Thank you, Chair. So starting off with performance for the second quarter, looking at the figures in the table, performance remains consistent with exception to our market share for housing completions. The table also shows performance in relation to decisions within 2 months at 100%, plan examination response times with applications being examined within 3 weeks at 88%, and average time to first response at 17 days. As always is the case, improvement to our first time response KPI continues to be our long-term aim. The significant additional workload being created, implementing and undertaking the administration of the building safety regulator regime changes mean that significant improvement in our processing times remain unlikely, although performance overall has improved in Q2 when compared to Q1 for this financial year. As indicated, our share in completions in the housing market is extremely low at 12%, and this continues to represent the slowing up of house building in our area by developers using the partnership to oversee house building schemes. At the last joint committee meeting, general market share was reported for Q1 at 81%. For Q2, this has been measured at 80% and remains above target. And compared to the same period last year, it was measured at 70%. Moving on to the national and regional LABC awards, the partnership has won 2 Southwest Regional LABC awards this year. The best community project, and that was the Water Sports Centre at North Raccoon, and the best site manager. As regional winners, these 2 entries will now be entered into the national awards and will go up against the winners of the other regions across the whole country. In addition to this success, the partnership has also been nominated by its customers for a further national award, the LABC Building Control Team of the Year. Moving on to resourcing, unfortunately, our rebuilding progress has received a significant setback since the last committee meeting, as the Mid Devon Building Inspector has resigned and left his position at the end of September. The inspector has resigned and left the partnership for a new opportunity with the private sector building control provider. Both this vacant role and a long-standing vacant senior Mid Devon position have been advertised, but unfortunately closed this week without a single application being received. Also, since the last committee meeting, while it was anticipated, our long-serving technical support officer has retired and left the partnership at the end of August. I'm pleased to report that this role has been filled in the last week, and our new part-time technical support officer starts with us on Monday, the 4th of November. Moving back to the inspectors, because of the success we had in achieving registration with the BSR, our inspectors are being targeted by recruitment agencies acting on behalf of the private providers. Therefore, it's fair to say the partnership does remain at a high risk of losing further registered inspectors to our competition, with little prospects of being able to replace them given our current inability to be competitive in the recruitment marketplace. Workload. The BSR recording and supervision requirements are having a significant impact on our under-resourced team, are all reporting that they are struggling with the volume of work. Mandatory training requirements are also impacting our available resource, with 5 of the team attending long-term courses that takes them out of the working environment 1 day each a week. What are already small teams, this is making life very challenging and on some days impossible to meet the service demands. It is evident that the current combination of the changes to working practices, training and the lack of resource are taking its toll on individuals, and it's likely to influence decisions in relation to their commitment to stay into the partnership. It is very likely in the current resourcing challenges, if the current resourcing challenges are not resolved, we may well see further departures. Moving on to the building safety levy. Since the general election, there have been no further announcements in relation to the introduction of the building safety levy or how it will be implemented. Moving on to the BSR data collection requirements. Since the last joint committee meeting, the BSR have written to both Mid and North Devon councils seeking a contact point for the required data collection. As IDOCs, our service provider, have not yet written reports to capture the KPI information, the partnership has continued to capture this information as it processes on spreadsheets. The BSR have announced some tweaks to the data that's required, so the partnership will need to review these changes and tweak the spreadsheets in order to ensure that we're capturing the correct information to feed back to the BSR. The partnership is still waiting for a response from IDOCs with regard to the KPI report writing, and given the first formal submission is due at the end of the 4th quarter of this financial year, with data collection being required for submission from the 1st of January 25, it's unlikely that these will be ready and operational in time, therefore placing a further burden and pressure on the team. Moving on to the partnership agreement review. Since the last committee meeting, the senior management team and building control manager have met and undertaken an initial scoping session to start the process of the review. A further update will be provided at the next meeting to advise on progress. And the final item I just wanted to report on was that with regard to the ISO, our ISO accreditation, since the last committee meeting, the LABC have provided audit training for managers to assist them in submitting internal audit information to the standards team. This training has been provided with a view to each building control team submitting information by mid-November to test each service against the new ISO framework, which will be published and matches the BSR regime requirements. In addition, the partnership has also received notification it will receive an external ISO audit in December by the regulatory authority, the BSI, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Andy. First of all, congratulations on the LABC awards. That's a good morale builder. And let's, in terms of moving forward into the national awards, let's keep our fingers crossed on there. After that, it's intense competition and a really tough marketplace. Questions?
Yeah,
Peter.
I was just thinking in terms of, because obviously everybody's starting to look at budgets for next year now. I mean, just bearing in mind that you got no applications for those vacant posts, and you know, knowing how strong the competition is in the private sector. I mean, in terms of your projections for next year, are you take a gloomy view of it or an optimistic view of where we'll be? I mean, particularly in terms of agency costs, which just punch a huge hole.
Absolutely. I mean, we do have a planned meeting after this session today, but the issues that we're experiencing are not just in our authorities; they are across the southwest and across the country, and there are building control services that have been decimated and lost everybody. Including the manager. So there are some services that are operating purely on agency provision. I think that the word from the LABC in general and from the rest of the southwest is that they are all looking at putting their salaries up through market supplements. That will in no way will that address the gap between the private and the public sector, but it's an attempt to slow the bleeding of the resource in that direction. So I think there is some scope there to perhaps we can look at that. And the feedback that we're receiving from the LABC is that we shouldn't be shy in putting our charges up,
Yeah,
as long as we can put those charges up and reflect that they meet the charges regulations so that we're not overcharging. Because the private approved inspectors most of whom have already been through the BSR audit process are putting their charges up so that they can actually work within the BSR regime.
Mhm.
Because previously perhaps the perception is that the private sector maybe haven't been inspecting quite as often and as regularly as the local authorities have. And obviously to match the performance standards, they've got to do that now.
yeah,
And clearly that pushes up their costs. So there's, I obviously that is for a discussion, but clearly the pressures that are coming on the service relate to the fact that we're under resourced and there's an increased amount of administration that goes with the new regime. We're actually, in some of the processes, actually spending more time recording what we're doing than we are actually doing process.
yeah,
And you know, unfortunately, that I guess that's a legacy of increased bureaucracy, isn't it, that comes with the changes.
yeah,
And I think where the private sector perhaps has won over on the local authorities is that perhaps the IT and the background, you know, the back office systems are far more advanced and perhaps adaptable
yeah,
and are specific for the building control function.
Mhm.
Mean that a lot of the information that we're having to record manually is done automated in the IT package. And the fact that IDOCs can't actually provide us with the reports yet,
yeah.
you know, they should have been in place in April of this year, you know, it speaks volumes.
Okay. Thank you.
Within the table, I'm looking at the market share, the number of applications.
Yeah.
And that's above target. And the market share of new completions actually being substantially down below target. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so the general market covers all types of building work. So from commercial work, internal alterations, extensions, loft conversions, so pretty much everything, and includes housing. So our general market share is high, and what is low is specifically new house building. So what we find, and what the house building sector is kind of split into two. You have the big developers like Wimpey and Barrett's, who will not use local authority building control. They'll have a framework agreement with an approved inspector, normally the NHBC or somebody like that. So they won't come to the local authority. What we tend to find is that smaller developers, medium-sized developers, and perhaps individuals that have a bit of land that get planning permission for 5 units will come to the local authority. So what we're finding is that those people are still coming to us, but they're not coming in the same volume because those houses just aren't being built or those developments aren't going ahead. So it's the volume house builders that are obviously continuing, but perhaps not quite at the rate they were because of the economic position. See that the smaller developers, those ones just aren't coming through.
I kind of guessed that would be your answer. And so it's coming back, that does the KPI require an adjustment if that's the reality? Or is this a symptom of the time and the climate that we're in at the moment?
I would be reluctant to change it at the moment. I think it is a symptom of the economic conditions. Or perhaps it may well reflect a change in the fact that there aren't quite so many smaller sites being approved. There are a number of reasons that it could be in terms of planning concerns. It's a target that just measures, you know, the volume of work that we're receiving in that sector, isn't it? Yeah, I think 40% is a good. It would be good to strive towards that target, but at the same time, there are portions of that workload that we're never going to be able to access because those big developers, you know, as things stand, are not going to shift. They're going to continue to work with a framework with a national approved inspector or the NHBC.
Any other questions? Paul Deal online, does this kind of cover some of the background information that you were looking at earlier?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, sorry, it is helpful to understand the wider the position of the market, etc.
Thank you, Chair. And yeah, just to add to what Andy was saying, I think the focus in terms of budget setting for next year, both authorities are showing that their chargeable activities are showing as a forecast loss at the moment. So I think we need to address that, because obviously the non-chargeable elements, we've got no control over that in terms of that's things we have to do. But the chargeable activities, as businesses, we should be looking to make sure we at least recover our cost. We obviously can't make significant profits, and obviously we can spread that over a period of time. But having had a couple of years where that cost has obviously increased, I think if there's opportunity to look at fees and charges coupled with how we can retain the staff by making sure we can, I don't think we're going to close that gap between public sector and private sector. I don't think we're able to do that, but if we can mitigate that and try and protect the staff that Andy has got by trying to retain as many as possible, that's got to be the focus as part of next year's budget setting. And as Andy says, we've got a discussion after this meeting to do that. And obviously it's good that the review of fees potentially can be looked at as well in light of that. I think that's got to be our focus moving forwards.
So perhaps on that note, we can note the report, and that seems to be the most expedient way of moving forward, looking at those charges. And as you say, you're picking this up in a following meeting to work through that level of detail.
Yes, yeah.
So, if there are no other questions at all, can I move to formally closing the meeting at
Just need to note the report, Chair.
Sorry?
We just need to note the report.
Yeah, sorry, to note the report. Those in favour of noting the report,
Thank you.
therefore close the meeting at 10:30. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Good to see you, Paul.